If you hear a child scream for help, you do not ask questions first, you move. The sound of tires screeching lightly against gravel echoed through the quiet suburban street as 9-year-old Emily Mitchell ran as fast as her small legs could carry her toward Carter Garage, her face pale, her voice breaking before she even reached the open door. Inside the garage, the afternoon was supposed to be ordinary. Tools neatly placed on metal hooks. The smell of motor oil and clean steel lingering in the air. A half-repaired sedan resting on a hydraulic lift while sunlight poured through the wide-open bay doors of the small neighborhood workshop. Ryan Mitchell stood beneath the lifted vehicle, his hands covered in grease, focused on a delicate adjustment that required absolute precision. At 38 years old, he looked like an ordinary mechanic in a faded navy shirt, worn jeans, and scuffed boots. Nothing about him suggested the past he had buried. Nothing about him revealed the years he once spent in silence, discipline, and missions the world would never fully understand. "Daddy." Emily's voice cut through the calm like a warning siren. Ryan immediately stepped back from the car without hesitation, wiping his hands once on a rag before turning toward the sound. His expression changed instantly from calm focus to alert concern. Emily appeared at the entrance of the garage, breathless, her eyes wide with fear, her small hands shaking. "It's Mom, please, they took her, she needs help." The words came out uneven, broken between gasps of air. Ryan did not ask who they were. He did not ask where. He did not even ask how it started. In less than a second, he had already grabbed his keys from the workbench and moved toward her. "Where is she now?" he asked calmly, his voice steady in a way that made Emily feel safe even in her panic. "Near the old office building downtown, she was trying to leave, and Emily could not finish the sentence. Ryan placed a gentle hand on her shoulder. "You stay here," he said firmly, but softly. "Lock the door behind me." Emily shook her head immediately. "I am coming." Ryan looked at her for a brief moment, seeing fear, confusion, and trust all at once. He crouched slightly to meet her eyes. "You are safe here. That is your mission right now. Can you do that for me?" Emily hesitated, then nodded. Ryan gave her a short, reassuring look before stepping out into the daylight. The garage door rolled shut behind him, leaving only the quiet hum of engines and the distant sound of city traffic. He walked to an old black pickup truck parked just outside the workshop, its paint slightly faded but well maintained. As he started the engine, there was no rush in his movements, no visible panic. Only focus. Only control. Across the street, the world continued as if nothing had changed. But for Ryan Mitchell, everything had already shifted. Somewhere in the city, a mother needed help. And whatever stood in the way, he was already moving toward it. Ryan Mitchell guided his old pickup through the afternoon traffic with remarkable calm, his eyes scanning every intersection, every parking lot, and every reflection in the side mirrors. Years earlier he had learned that panic clouded judgment, while patience revealed details other people never noticed. He followed the directions Emily had managed to describe, arriving at a quiet office district where most employees had already gone home for the day. Long shadows stretched across the sidewalks as the lowering sun reflected from rows of glass buildings. Ryan parked a short distance away instead of driving directly to the entrance. He stepped out, quietly observing the surroundings before taking another step. A luxury black sport utility vehicle stood near the curb with its driver's door slightly open. A leather handbag rested on the pavement beside it, and several folders containing business documents had scattered across the sidewalk as if someone had dropped them while leaving in a hurry. Ryan slowly approached, listening more than looking. A faint voice carried through the still air. "Please, my daughter." The sound came from behind the corner of a nearby office building. Ryan walked quickly but carefully until he reached a quiet courtyard. There he found a woman sitting against a stone planter, visibly exhausted and shaken but conscious. Her elegant navy business suit was dusty, and one sleeve had been torn during what appeared to have been a desperate attempt to pull herself free from an earlier confrontation. She looked up as Ryan approached, immediately trying to stand on her own. "It is all right," Ryan said gently. "Do not rush." The woman steadied herself against the planter before speaking. My daughter, is she safe? Ryan gave a reassuring nod. She reached my garage. She is safe, and she is waiting for you. The woman closed her eyes with visible relief, taking a slow breath before quietly whispering, thank you. Ryan carefully offered his hand, allowing her to rise at her own pace. He noticed she moved carefully, protecting one shoulder that appeared sore from the struggle she had described. Without asking unnecessary questions, he removed the lightweight work jacket from his own shoulders and gently placed it around hers against the cool afternoon breeze. Can you walk? He asked calmly. She nodded. Yes. Together they slowly returned toward the pickup truck. Ryan collected the scattered documents along the sidewalk, carefully placing every page back inside the leather folder before setting it on the passenger seat beside her. He never opened it. He never glanced inside. To him, another person's privacy deserved the same respect as their safety. As they drove away, the woman remained unusually quiet, watching Ryan's steady hands on the steering wheel. Most people would have demanded explanations by now. He asked only one question. Would you like some water? She looked at him with quiet surprise before softly answering, yes, please. Ryan handed her a cold bottle from the small cooler behind the seat. Thank you, she whispered again. Several minutes later they arrived at Carter Garage. Before the truck had completely stopped, Emily hurried out through the front door and ran directly toward her mother. The woman immediately embraced her daughter with grateful tears, holding her close for several long moments beneath the warm evening light. Ryan quietly turned away, giving them the privacy they deserved. Frank Dawson, who had arrived to finish the day's work, watched from inside the garage with quiet admiration. You do not even know who she is, do you? He asked. Ryan simply shook his head while returning his tools to the workbench. No. Frank smiled. Are you curious? Ryan looked toward the reunited mother and daughter before answering in his usual calm voice. Right now, she is simply a mother who needed help. That is enough for me. Standing just outside the garage door, the woman overheard every word. She lowered her eyes, realizing that for the first time in many years, someone had seen her as a person before seeing her position, and she quietly decided that her real name would remain a secret a little while longer. That night, Carter Garage remained lit long after the rest of the neighborhood had fallen into silence. The hum of fluorescent workshop lights mixed with the soft ticking sound of cooling engines, creating a calm rhythm that Ryan Mitchell had grown used to over the years. Inside the office, Emily sat quietly on a worn couch wrapped in a spare blanket, finally asleep after the emotional shock of the day. The woman, still refusing to reveal her identity, sat nearby, watching her daughter with a mixture of relief and exhaustion slowly fading into something closer to safety. Ryan stood at the workbench cleaning his tools with slow, deliberate movements. He had not asked for names, companies, or explanations. In his world, safety always came first, answers came later. The woman finally broke the silence. I need to thank you properly, she said softly. Ryan shook his head without looking up. You already did. You got your daughter back safely. She hesitated, then added, that is not all you did today. Ryan paused for a moment before placing a wrench down on the table. Anyone would have done the same. She looked at him more closely now, studying the calm discipline in his posture, the way he moved without wasted motion, the quiet awareness in his eyes that never fully relaxed even in peace. No, she replied gently. Not anyone. Before Ryan could respond, headlights flashed outside the garage. A black sedan slowed near the entrance but did not immediately enter. Two men in formal suits stepped out, scanning the area before approaching with controlled urgency. Emily stirred slightly in her sleep but did not wake. Ryan instinctively shifted his stance, placing himself between the office and the door without making it obvious. The woman immediately noticed his change in posture. It is okay, she whispered quickly. They are not a threat. Ryan did not move. The men stopped at the doorway and respectfully lowered their heads. Ms. Carter, one of them said carefully, We have been searching for you since the incident this afternoon. The moment the name was spoken, silence filled the garage. Frank Dawson, who had been organizing tools in the back, froze mid-step. Ryan slowly turned his head toward the woman, not with shock, but with calm realization. She closed her eyes for a brief moment, then finally spoke her true identity. My name is Olivia Carter. The name carried weight that even Ryan could not ignore, though his expression did not change. Frank exhaled sharply. You are the CEO of Carter Dynamics. The two men nodded respectfully, confirming what had just been revealed. Olivia lowered her voice. Yes. Ryan looked toward Emily sleeping safely on the couch, then back at Olivia. And someone tried to harm you? He asked simply. Olivia hesitated before answering. Someone tried to take control of my company, and used force when I refused to comply. Ryan remained silent for a long moment. There was no judgment in his eyes, only understanding. Is your daughter safe now because of what happened here? He asked. Olivia nodded. Yes. Ryan returned to his tools and continued cleaning them as if the conversation had reached its conclusion. Then we will deal with everything else tomorrow. The two suited men exchanged confused glances, expecting a different reaction, a demand for details, or at least concern about involvement. Instead, Ryan simply continued working. Olivia watched him carefully, realizing once again that nothing about this man was driven by status or fear of power. Later, after the men left and the garage returned to quiet, Olivia stepped outside alone for a moment, looking up at the night sky above the small workshop. She thought about boardrooms, negotiations, and billions of dollars in contracts, then looked back at the warm light spilling from the garage where her daughter slept safely. For the first time in years, she understood something clearly. Power had never protected her today. Silence, discipline, and a man who asked no questions had. Morning arrived with cool spring air drifting through the open doors of Carter Garage as the neighborhood slowly came to life. Ryan Mitchell had already returned to work before sunrise, replacing brake pads on an aging family sedan while soft country music played quietly from an old radio resting on a wooden shelf. To anyone passing by, the previous evening could have been mistaken for an ordinary memory. Only the unfamiliar black luxury sport utility vehicle parked discreetly behind the garage suggested otherwise. Inside the small office, Olivia Carter sat beside Emily, who happily colored pictures at a worn wooden table while drinking hot chocolate from one of Ryan's oversized ceramic mugs. For the first time in days, Olivia noticed her daughter smiling without fear. The simple sound filled her with gratitude she struggled to describe. Ryan entered carrying a small tray with fresh coffee and warm breakfast sandwiches wrapped in paper. He placed them gently on the table without ceremony. You both should eat before making any decisions today, he said calmly. Olivia smiled. You seem to think of everything. Ryan shook his head with quiet humility. Only the things people usually forget when life becomes complicated. Emily laughed softly. Daddy always says breakfast solves more problems than arguments. Ryan smiled at his daughter before returning to the service bay. Olivia watched him disappear beneath the raised sedan, wondering how someone who had clearly experienced extraordinary things had chosen such an ordinary life. A short time later, she stepped into the garage carrying her untouched coffee. Ryan was carefully inspecting the suspension of the customer's vehicle, every movement precise and patient. May I ask you something? She said. Ryan rolled out from beneath the car on the mechanic's creeper and nodded. Of course. Olivia looked around the modest workshop with its organized tools, faded family photographs, handwritten thank you cards taped beside the workbench, and shelves filled with repaired parts waiting to be returned to grateful customers. Someone with your discipline could be running a large company or managing a national operation. Why stay here? Ryan considered the question before answering. Because every person who drives into this garage is trusting me to help them get home safely. That responsibility has always been enough. Olivia quietly absorbed his words. Before she could respond, her attention shifted toward an old wooden shadow box hanging high on the wall. Inside rested a neatly folded American flag, several military challenge coins, a Bronze Star medal, and a Navy SEAL trident displayed without any labels or explanation. The display looked respectful rather than proud, almost as though it had been placed there by someone else. Olivia stared at it for several moments before softly asking, "Were those yours?" Ryan followed her gaze. His expression remained peaceful. "They belong to a chapter of my life that ended a long time ago." Olivia looked back at him with growing curiosity. "You never mentioned serving." Ryan simply shrugged. "People come here because they need a mechanic, not because they need stories." Before Olivia could ask another question, Frank Dawson walked in carrying a delivery invoice. He noticed where she was looking and smiled warmly. "He would never tell you himself," Frank said, "but every veteran in this county knows exactly who he is." Ryan immediately interrupted with gentle firmness. "Frank." Frank nodded apologetically but could not hide the admiration in his voice. "He has always preferred fixing engines over talking about metals." Olivia looked at Ryan once again, beginning to understand that the quiet man standing before her had spent years protecting strangers long before he ever repaired their automobiles. Outside, a dark executive sedan slowed briefly across the street before continuing past the garage. Ryan noticed it only for a second in the reflection of the office window, his expression never changing. He quietly memorized the license plate before returning to work, while somewhere deep inside, instincts he believed had long been left behind began waking once again. By the following afternoon, Carter Garage no longer felt hidden from the outside world. News of Olivia Carter's disappearance had begun circulating through financial media, though very few details had been released publicly. Ryan Mitchell continued working exactly as he always had, replacing a faulty water pump on a customer's pickup truck while sunlight streamed across the concrete floor. To him, every vehicle deserved the same attention, whether it belonged to a school teacher or a company executive. Olivia stood quietly near the office window watching him work. She had spent years surrounded by people who constantly reminded her of her title, her wealth, and her influence. Ryan had never mentioned any of those things. He simply treated her like any other guest who needed a safe place to rest. Emily and Ryan's daughter sat together on overturned buckets near the back of the garage, laughing as they drew pictures of old cars and racing stripes with colored pencils. Their easy friendship made the room feel lighter than it had in days. Suddenly, 3 black executive sport utility vehicles rolled slowly into the parking lot outside. Several professionally dressed men and women stepped out, followed by 2 uniformed private security officers. Frank Dawson looked toward the entrance and quietly whispered, "That is not a normal customer." The visitors entered respectfully, immediately recognizing Olivia. The oldest executive, a silver-haired man wearing an expensive charcoal suit, visibly relaxed the moment he saw her. "Ms. Carter," he said with genuine relief, "we have been searching everywhere for you." Olivia nodded calmly. "I know." Another executive placed a tablet computer on the workbench displaying urgent financial headlines. "The board meeting begins in less than 2 hours. Investors are demanding answers. The entire company has been waiting for your decision." Ryan happened to glance at the screen while wiping his hands with a clean towel. The headline filled nearly the entire display. "Carter Dynamics Chief Executive Officer missing during corporate crisis." Ryan looked from the screen toward Olivia. There was no surprise in his expression, only quiet understanding. "So that is why everyone has been looking for you," he said softly. Olivia lowered her eyes. "Yes." Frank stared in disbelief. "You are not just a business owner. You lead one of the largest technology companies in the country." Olivia offered a small apologetic smile. "I hoped, for just a little while, to be treated like an ordinary mother." Ryan folded the towel neatly and placed it beside his toolbox. "You were." One of the executives turned toward Ryan with sincere gratitude. "Sir, you have no idea what you have done for this company." Ryan calmly shook his head. "I helped someone who needed help. The company was never my concern." Before anyone could continue, another vehicle quietly entered the parking lot. This one carried only a single passenger. Victor Lang stepped out wearing an impeccably tailored navy business suit, carrying a slim leather portfolio beneath one arm. His smile appeared polite, yet something about it felt carefully rehearsed. He walked toward Olivia with measured confidence. "It is good to see you safe," he said smoothly. Olivia remained silent. Victor glanced briefly around the modest garage before looking back at Ryan. "Thank you for your assistance. Our legal department will make sure you are generously compensated." Ryan met his eyes without emotion. "No compensation is necessary." Victor smiled again. "Everyone has a price." The garage became completely still. Ryan answered quietly, "Not everyone." Emily looked toward her father with quiet pride. Olivia watched the brief exchange with growing concern, recognizing something in Victor's calm voice that reminded her of the pressure she had been facing inside the company for months. Ryan noticed it as well. He had spent enough years reading people to recognize the difference between confidence and control. As Victor handed Olivia a folder marked Confidential Board Resolution, Ryan's eyes briefly settled on the unopened documents before returning to Victor's face. He said nothing, yet deep inside he sensed that the greatest danger Olivia faced had never been the incident outside the office building. It had been quietly waiting inside the boardroom all along. Ryan Mitchell watched Victor Lang place the confidential folder on the workbench without making a single move toward it. Years of experience had taught him that the most dangerous decisions were often hidden inside ordinary-looking paperwork rather than dramatic moments. Olivia Carter noticed his hesitation immediately. "Do not open it," she said quietly. Victor maintained his professional smile. "This is merely an updated board resolution requiring your signature before this afternoon's emergency meeting." Olivia looked directly at him. "I have never approved an emergency meeting." Victor folded his hands calmly. "The board exercised its authority during your absence." The garage grew unusually quiet. Frank Dawson slowly stopped organizing tools while Emily and Ryan's daughter continued drawing together in the office, blissfully unaware of the conversation unfolding only a few yards away. Ryan finally spoke. "If she has not had time to review the documents with her own legal counsel, then signing them today would not be wise." Victor turned toward Ryan with polite patience. "With respect, Mr. Mitchell, this is a corporate matter." Ryan nodded once. "Then she should have every opportunity to read it without pressure." Olivia looked at Ryan before reaching for the folder. She carefully opened it and began reading each page in silence. The executives who had accompanied her exchanged increasingly uneasy glances. Several minutes passed without anyone interrupting. Finally, Olivia stopped reading halfway through the document. Her expression changed completely. "This resolution transfers temporary executive authority to the Special Governance Committee," she said quietly. Victor answered smoothly. "Only until the current situation stabilizes." Olivia slowly turned another page. "It also authorizes long-term restructuring without my approval." Victor remained composed. "Standard legal protection." Ryan did not look at the papers. Instead, he quietly observed everyone's reactions. One executive standing near the door repeatedly avoided eye contact. Another appeared genuinely surprised by the language inside the document. Ryan recognized uncertainty spreading through the room. Calmly he asked a simple question. "When was this prepared?" Victor answered immediately. "Earlier today." Ryan looked toward the printed signature page. "Then why does the revision history show a preparation date from last week?" Silence filled the garage. Victor's smile faded for the first time. Olivia immediately returned to the front page and carefully examined the document metadata printed at the bottom. Her eyes widened. "This draft existed before I disappeared." Several executives stepped closer to verify what Ryan had noticed without ever touching the papers himself. One of the company's senior financial officers quietly cleared his throat. "He is right. The document identification number confirms an earlier revision." Victor attempted to respond. "That is simply an administrative detail." Olivia calmly closed the folder. No. It means someone expected me to lose control of the company before any emergency occurred. Ryan remained perfectly still. He never claimed to understand corporate law. He had simply learned that preparation often revealed intention. Olivia looked toward the executives who had stood beside her for years. I want every communication, every meeting record, and every revision associated with this proposal independently reviewed before anyone schedules another vote. Several executives nodded in immediate agreement. Even the two private security officers exchanged uncertain looks before quietly stepping away from Victor. The atmosphere inside the garage changed without anyone raising a voice. No accusations were shouted. No dramatic confrontation followed. The truth had quietly shifted the balance. Victor carefully picked up his briefcase, realizing that the confidence he had carried into the garage had disappeared the moment a mechanic asked one patient question. Before leaving, he looked once more at Ryan. You notice things most people overlook. Ryan answered with the same calm expression he had worn since the beginning. Sometimes the smallest details protect the biggest things. After every vehicle departed and silence returned once again, Olivia remained standing beside the workbench, looking at the unopened toolbox, the neatly organized garage, and the ordinary man who had just prevented her from making the costliest decision of her career without ever asking for recognition, reminding her that true strength often revealed itself through quiet observation rather than loud authority. The garage felt different after Victor Lang and the executives left. Not louder, not quieter, but heavier in a way that lingered in the air like unresolved tension. Ryan Mitchell returned to his usual work without comment, lifting the hood of a customer vehicle and continuing repairs as if nothing significant had happened. Yet Olivia Carter remained standing near the workbench, still holding the closed folder that had nearly changed the future of her company without her consent. Emily and Ryan's daughter were now playing quietly in the corner, their laughter soft and innocent, unaware of the complexity unfolding around the adults. Olivia finally placed the folder down with deliberate care. You did not hesitate for even a moment, she said. Ryan did not look up from his work. Hesitation does not help people when they are already under pressure. Olivia studied him more closely now. Most people in that situation would have either signed it or stayed silent. Ryan adjusted a socket wrench and replied calmly, most people are not responsible for the outcome, only the reaction. Frank Dawson, who had been quietly observing from the back, walked forward. You know, he said, I have worked with Ryan for years, and I have never seen him wrong about people. Not once. Olivia turned toward Frank. How is that possible? Frank shrugged slightly. He does not guess. He watches. Ryan placed the wrench down and finally straightened up. It is not about guessing. It is about noticing what people reveal when they think no one is paying attention. Olivia looked back at the folder. Then you noticed something about Victor that we missed. Ryan nodded once. He did not look at you like someone trying to protect your company. He looked at you like someone trying to own it. A long silence followed. Olivia slowly sat down on the edge of a stool, processing the weight of what had almost happened. I have spent years surrounded by advisors, lawyers, and executives, she said quietly. And none of them saw what you saw in a few minutes. Ryan answered simply, that is because I was not looking for status. I was looking for behavior. Emily's voice suddenly interrupted the serious atmosphere from across the room. Daddy, can I show Miss Olivia my drawing? The tension softened instantly. Olivia smiled for the first time that day. Of course. Emily ran over holding a colorful drawing of 2 houses, 2 children, and a large garage in the middle. Olivia looked at it carefully. That is beautiful. Emily pointed proudly. That is our garage. Daddy fixes things so people can go home safely. Olivia glanced at Ryan, noticing how he briefly paused before returning to his work, almost uncomfortable with praise. He really does that, Olivia said softly. Frank leaned against a nearby shelf. He also helps people when they cannot pay. Never tells anyone. Just writes it off. Olivia looked surprised. Why would he do that? Ryan finally responded without stopping his work. Because sometimes people are not paying for repairs. They are paying for the chance to get back on their feet. Olivia remained silent for a long moment, then stood and walked slowly toward him. You realize you just prevented a multi-billion-dollar mistake in my company, she said. Ryan looked at her briefly. You would have figured it out eventually. Olivia shook her head. No. I would have signed it. That statement hung in the air longer than anything else said that day. Ryan simply returned to tightening the last bolt on the engine. Then it is a good thing you did not have to do it alone. Olivia watched him for a moment longer, realizing something she had never encountered in her entire career. The most powerful person in the room was not the one with the most money or authority. It was the one who never needed to prove anything at all. The following morning, the first rays of sunlight stretched across the polished concrete floor of Carter Garage as if the building itself had been given a fresh beginning. Ryan Mitchell was already working beneath the hood of an aging pickup truck while a fresh pot of coffee filled the workshop with a familiar warmth. Outside, birds perched along the telephone wires, and the quiet neighborhood slowly awakened. Inside the office, Olivia Carter stood beside the window holding her phone. Overnight, independent attorneys had confirmed everything Ryan had suspected. The questionable board resolution had been suspended, an internal investigation had begun, and several senior directors had requested an emergency review of recent corporate decisions. She quietly placed the phone back into her purse before walking into the garage. Ryan did not stop working. Everything worked out, he asked without looking up. Olivia smiled gently. It is finally moving in the right direction. Ryan nodded once. That is good. Olivia watched him tighten the final bolt before closing the hood with practiced precision. Ryan, I owe you more than I can possibly repay. He wiped his hands on a clean shop towel and simply answered, You do not owe me anything. She stepped closer. You protected my daughter. You protected me. Yesterday you protected my company without asking for anything in return. Ryan leaned lightly against the workbench. Helping someone should not create a debt. Olivia took a slow breath before opening a leather portfolio she had carried into the garage. Inside were several neatly organized documents bearing the Carter Dynamics corporate seal. I would like to purchase this garage, she said softly. Completely renovate it, expand it, provide new equipment, new lifts, new offices, anything you want. Ryan smiled politely before shaking his head. No. Olivia blinked with surprise. You have not even looked at the proposal. I do not need to. She looked genuinely confused. Most people would accept without hesitation. Ryan glanced toward Emily and his daughter, who were laughing together while building a small toy garage from wooden blocks. This place already has everything I need. Olivia remained silent for several moments before trying again. Then let me invest in your future. Ryan looked around the modest garage that had become his home after leaving military service, every tool resting exactly where he had placed it, every customer photograph carrying memories instead of wealth. My future is already here. Frank Dawson quietly smiled from the service counter, having expected exactly that answer. Olivia slowly closed the portfolio. Then tell me what you would accept. Ryan thought carefully before speaking. There are a lot of veterans who come home looking for honest work. There are single parents trying to rebuild their lives after everything falls apart. Some of them never get a second chance because nobody is willing to give them the first one. Olivia listened without interrupting. Ryan continued calmly. If you really want to help, build a training program. Teach people valuable skills. Give them a place to learn automotive repair, welding, diagnostics, anything that lets them earn a living with dignity. No special treatment. Just an opportunity. Olivia looked at him with quiet admiration. That is all you want? Ryan nodded. A chance changes more lives than a check ever will. The garage fell completely silent. Even Frank lowered his eyes for a moment, deeply moved by the simplicity of the request. Olivia extended her hand toward Ryan. "Then that is exactly what we will build." Ryan shook her hand firmly. There were no cameras, no reporters, no corporate announcements, only two people standing inside a small neighborhood garage making a decision that neither of them fully realized would change hundreds of lives. Watching from the office doorway, Emily smiled at her mother while Ryan's daughter waved happily from beside the toy garage, and for the first time since this unexpected journey had begun, Olivia understood that the greatest investment she would ever make had nothing to do with money and everything to do with giving ordinary people the opportunity to stand with dignity on their own feet. 1 year later, the familiar sound of engines filled Carter Garage once again, but the small workshop had become something far greater than anyone in the neighborhood could have imagined. The original building still stood exactly where it always had, its weathered brick walls and open service bays preserved as a reminder of where everything began. Beside it now stood the Mitchell Carter Automotive Training Center, a bright modern facility where veterans, single parents, and young adults learned skilled trades free of charge through a program funded by Carter Dynamics but guided by Ryan Mitchell's simple philosophy that opportunity should always come before charity. Every morning dozens of students arrived carrying toolboxes instead of uncertainty, and every evening they left carrying confidence instead of fear. Ryan refused to place his name on the front of the building, insisting the program belonged to everyone willing to work hard for a second chance. Olivia Carter respected that decision completely. She had returned to leading her company with greater transparency than ever before after the independent investigation exposed the board's improper actions and restored trust throughout the organization. Victor Lang quietly resigned before the final review concluded, and the company moved forward without bitterness, choosing accountability over revenge. On a warm Saturday morning, families gathered outside the training center for the graduation of the first class of apprentices. American flags moved gently in the breeze while polished classic automobiles restored by the students lined the entrance. Ryan stood near the back of the crowd wearing the same faded work shirt he had always worn, applauding each graduate with genuine pride. Olivia arrived without a motorcade, wearing a simple navy dress instead of a business suit. She walked directly toward Ryan, carrying a small wooden plaque wrapped in cloth. "I have one more gift," she said softly. Ryan smiled with quiet amusement. "I thought we settled that a year ago." Olivia nodded. "We did. This one is different." She handed him the plaque. Ryan slowly uncovered it. Carved into the polished walnut surface were only a few simple words. "Because one man chose to help without asking who needed saving, hundreds of families found hope." Ryan remained silent for several moments before looking at Olivia. "This belongs inside the classroom," he said. "Not in my office." Olivia smiled because she had expected exactly that answer. Together they carried the plaque into the training center and placed it near the entrance where every new student would see it before picking up a wrench for the very first time. Nearby, Emily and Ryan's daughter laughed together while helping younger children build miniature wooden cars at a craft table, their friendship as natural as it had been on the day their lives first crossed. Frank Dawson watched everything from the garage doorway, quietly shaking his head with a grateful smile. "You fixed a lot more than engines," he whispered. Ryan looked across the shop where students worked side by side, veterans taught new apprentices, and parents prepared for better futures with their own hands. Sunlight poured through the open garage doors exactly as it had on the afternoon a frightened little girl first ran inside asking for help. Ryan finally answered with the same quiet humility that had guided every decision he made. People were never broken. They only needed someone willing to believe in them. No applause followed those words. No cameras rushed forward. Only the steady sound of tools, honest work, children laughing, and ordinary people building extraordinary futures together, proving that true heroes are remembered not for the battles they win, but for the lives they quietly change long after the world stops watching.